I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Man, that is a sad clown.
Dude, that's pretty good.
This is The Gloom, bringing you weekly interviews with F3 Omaha packs, exploring their F3 experiences and finding those sticky elements that create the glue in the gloom. All right, we're back. We got another episode, another fine gentleman and leader on the line, a guy that I've really just appreciated just his passion for serving other men as a leader, as a friend. And also, we share some similar experience in the IT space. So we've had a chance to work on some of the behind the scenes IT stuff that keeps F3 Omaha trucking along. But GP or Golden Pike is who I've got on the line. So it's good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, would love if you would just take us back to the beginning, sort of who EH'd you, what was the first workout like, what do you remember, and then how did we land on the name Golden Pike?
Okay, yeah. So I was EH'd by Zebo and Black Flag. It was kind of a weird thing where I had been talking to Black Flag a little bit about it and wanted to get to know Black Flag and his family and Zebo. But Zebo posted something on Facebook and that got my attention about F3. And it was, I think it was one of the winter CSOPs where you guys were like, it might have been after Christmas or something like that, but it looked horrendous. Like everybody was just traipsing through the snow and it looked freezing cold and wet. And I was trying to get, back to being healthy. I'm kind of constantly on a search for a new way to renovate myself. And and I said, that looks awful. I probably should do something hard. Maybe I should just reach out to him, even though I'm really, really scared. And he responded like right away, like, hey, we're going out Friday, bring some gloves, and he invited me to Golden Spike. So I was like, well, I have to get up at like 4:30 in the morning just to get ready and get all my gear on and then get out there. I was like, I guess I'll do that. So I show up. I didn't show up for the pre-run, but I noticed people were running, and I'm thinking it first off in my head as I'm driving up to the Burke football stadium, and I'm seeing these guys run. I'm like, did I miss the beat down? Like, and then I saw Zebo Black Flag running up together, and I was like, hey, is this the start? Is this Golden Spike? He's like, yeah, we're just doing a little pre-running. I'm like you run before? You run before the beat down? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, great. Wow. This is going to be intense. And I have like on probably the worst stuff you could have in the middle of February, which is when I came out, when it had been snowed and there's snow on ground. I had like a cotton, like, hoodie and like sweatpants, cotton sweatpants. Just like, I'm going to get like friggin' wet. But we were actually working out in the parking lot, which was just a sheet of ice. So I guess I was okay. And so Convoy was queuing that day. It was just a fairly simple, he had cones up in a square and we ran around. We did like a kind of corner to corner thing, grinder.
Oh, yeah.
And, that's the most vivid memory I have it. But the other one was I ran back to get my water bottle from my car. And I'm like, I gotta get my water bottle, that's like the typical FNG thing. And I'm just like looking for some relief in the middle of, feeling like I'm going to pass out. But at the end of it, they were asking, what's something you've done, or give us some special memories, tattoos, all that jazz. And I said I climbed Pikes Peak last year. It was the first time I ever climbed a mountain. And they're like, oh, okay, Golden Pike. And I was like, Golden Pike. Isn't that the name of the site? And,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
I mean, I think they were just doing their best with what I
Yeah.
gave.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty much stuck. Golden Pike, and not to be confused with Golden Spike. So most people call me GP, just to get that out of the way.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I've definitely adopted the GP, I hadn't heard that story though. Man, so were you, I guess, talk to me about, so you mentioned a little bit of like always trying to reinvent yourself, maybe not reinvent, but just
Renovate.
renovate, I think. So has that involved a lot of times like some sort of physical fitness? What have you tried in the past?
Yeah, to some degree. I mean, I really try to, I've always struggled with my weight. And so, and one of the things I realized is that I just get bored pretty quickly with things. And
Mm.
so, climbing a mountain was like a goal. And so I was like, I wanted to go, do it. And so we climbed Pikes Peak, and, we went on Craig's Trail, and we did it in the worst way possible. Started at like, we rolled in at like 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, and then by 3 a.m. we were waking up from our tent to go climb the mountain, like from Nebraska to Colorado, and climbing a mountain within 14 hours. So that's
Right.
not healthy. But in any
Yeah.
case, we made it. It took us a long time, and it's just something. After that, I constantly am like always trying to find that new thing that'll help me accelerate in any way. And it's a journey. There's always stuff that's
Yeah.
going to come up and teach me that.
Yeah. So initial impression of the beatdown, was it challenging? Was it worse than you thought? I mean, what'd you think
I
of it?
mean, I don't know. I don't know if it was worse than I thought, but yeah, it was super challenging. You get that usual like stereotype of the FNG wanting to puke their guts out. I don't think I was quite to puking my guts out level, but I was uh, pretty dead by the end of it. And I'll say that what happened is, we went to the beatdown, then we went to stories for the cafeteria, and I just got to know guys, and I'm a social person. I'm an extrovert, so for me, like that's just my bread and butter. And I got home and I said to my wife, I was like, she asked me how it was, and I said that was stupid hard, and I'm definitely going back again because
Yeah.
you
So
know
you like the challenge of it all. Yeah.
the challenge, and also the camaraderie. Like to me, it was like a revelation, because you don't find many groups where men are allowed to be themselves, and b are so just, I don't know, like just that glue that bonds you together through the hardship of the beatdown.
Hmm.
You're talking about the beatdown afterwards. You're talking about, man, that was so hard. And then people are telling you stories of other beatdowns, and you're just like, oh, that's crazy. But then on top of that, like, okay, we just saw like you about to almost throw up, GP, and so that's like the lowest point,
Yeah.
that you could be as a person, and now you can only go up from there in other people's eyes. And
Yeah.
then I guess the other aspect of it too is I am a people pleaser by nature,
Mm.
which means I'm always hungry for validation, and
Yeah.
I got loads of it during the beatdown. Just people saying, hey, you're doing your best, great job, good work. Like, I mean, I know it's like for some people, like that's just what you say, but
Yeah.
for me, as somebody who's like, I hunger for that. It was invigorating to me to get that.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think you're right. I mean, I think, at a certain level, we all want a little bit of validation or just that encouragement, right? And like like you're doing fine. And especially for a new guy where, I mean, it's just all so different, right? It's just like you show up and you're all of a sudden you're in this thing that you're like, this can't be real, right? It's like just like a lot of nuance, like counting in cadence and the names of exercises and
Mhm.
this group of guys that seemingly are like best friends, but like I don't know. I think it's a lot to take in. So
Yeah.
just being encouraging there. Tell me a little bit. You mentioned your kind of the ups and downs, or maybe struggles with weight, what else have you found in that space that's been helpful within the group? Are there maybe shield lock or queen service or anything else that you feel like, if somebody else is struggling with that, they should really plug into?
Yeah, I think definitely all of that is there's like a bunch of tools in the toolbox. I like to tell people with an F3,
Yeah.
it's up to you to dig into the toolbox as far down as you want to go. I've kind of had a shield lock, kind of not, but just I've had a group of guys that have always been kind of like, hey, I know I need to get out there more and do more. Like Black Flag and Zebo, obviously, are guys that I'm pretty close to on that regard. So we'll message each other and say, hey, we probably should go running. You want to go pre-run tomorrow. And as far as like diet and stuff like that, that's my biggest struggle. Is I constantly have an issue with overeating. But Queen Service has definitely been helpful, plugging into those guys. And I think this round we got like a bunch of guys. We got Mother Goose, Sister Act, and some other people who are trying some new things. And honestly, I like that. We're trying different things every time we do a Queen Service, accountability partners and recording things down, and just, looking for goals and getting aligned with people with your goals. So I think that's helpful. As far as on a personal level, what's worked for me most is doing intermittent fasting, trying to also up my exercise and my activity level alongside the discipline with my eating. And that's when I first came in and accelerated, I lost about 40 pounds.
Wow.
When I was initially, actually doing this and staying consistent. And then I shot up again because, I wasn't consistent and I wasn't, part of that. But F3, I'll say this, has at least kept me steady because there was a time that even from where I'm at now, I was up about 30 pounds and it was like dangerously heavy.
Yeah.
And so F3 though has kept me on a even keel at least. But anyway, my encouragement is, also I'll say this, I'm a bigger guy. Like I'm probably one of the heaviest of the F3 guys. And I want to say this to anybody listening, don't let that stop you from coming out. Don't let that stop you from being a part of putting in the work. Some workouts are going to be harder than others. And I'll tell you, I complain like crazy during some of the harder ones. Gosh dang it, this morning, even like, hey, we were like rolling around on that tough top rope asphalt. And I was just like wanting to cuss, but it was good for me. And it's good for any guy. So, doesn't matter how heavy you are, doesn't matter, what excuses you might have. You gotta just go out and do it.
Yeah. I love that. And I appreciate you saying that because I do think that's what I often hear from people that I'm trying to EH, right? Is they're like, oh, I'm not in good enough shape, right? And it's like, no, this is the group to like help you get into shape, right? You don't have to be, there's no requirement to join. Would be curious your perspective, like as you came in that first day, I guess, were you intimidated by the guys running? Was there any sort of nerves that you felt like you had to overcome? It seems like you showed up, you jumped in, and you even went to coffee your first time. So I don't know, any tricks of the trade there? Like how do you overcome some of that initial anxiety?
I'd say, I didn't have a huge amount of anxiety. I probably did feel a little bit intimidated because of the amount of fitness, people that were fit, but it was helpful that Black Flag and Zebo, who I had already known, were there, and they were kind of like, I was able to fit because I knew that I fit in with them. And so I think for starters, having somebody that you can kind of like have a real, at least one guy that you can relate with is a very helpful way to get into it. And there are guys who are, the other thing is I'm always thinking about it like this. Everybody struggles with something, whether it's physical or mental or whatever. There's always every guy has their own battle, and nobody is perfect. And so I kind of just think of it. I'm never too intimidated because I realize that.
Oh, that's great perspective. I really appreciate that thought because you're right on. I was just talking with my M actually this morning of like one of the things I love about F3 is we've everybody that's coming out, we recognize that, right? And we're not trying to like the comparison game really is non-existent, right? It's not like we're showing up and trying to win anything or be better, right? We're showing up because we've all sort of acknowledged that we need the group to help us get through the day, or
Right.
it's just is my favorite thing. You don't find that, at least in my experience. I don't find that at work, right? You find everybody's trying to one up each other, and
Right. Right. There's no pretense.
yeah, for sure. Hey, I'm curious too. So you came in. How did you know Black Flag and Zebo? Where do you know those guys from?
So, well, both of them are part of a church that is a sister church in our denomination of the church
Okay.
that I go to. So they go to First Covenant Church, and I go to Community Covenant Church, which are both part of the Evangelical Covenant Church. And I had reached out to Zebo a long time ago to help with a men's retreat, and we had, because that's always been kind of a passion of mine, as well as just reaching out to men. But we had played worship together, and then I think Black Flag went to that retreat, or no, actually, Black Flag I met a little bit later through some other things. I'm into board games, and so
Yeah.
we would have board game nights or something like that. And we also homeschool. They homeschool Black Flag and his M, and we wanted to get to know them through that. So just kind of like those kind of connections, and also just as a guy, I didn't have many good guy friends in my 30s, so I was like, well, I have to be proactive and try to get to know other guys that I'm acquainted with. And anyway, long story
Yeah.
short, yeah.
No, that's awesome. So do you play a musical instrument? Have you like perform with Zebo?
I play guitar. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I didn't realize that. That's really
Yeah.
cool. I
Yeah.
think I don't have too many talents or passions outside of maybe running, and so I'm like I'm so envious of guys like you that have an artistic talent of some sort. And Zebo
Well,
with his Namerama. Anyway, so
yeah.
okay, so coming into the group, kind of knowing or identifying like, hey, I really want to build some relationships. How did that go for you from a second F or fellowship perspective? What did you find helpful or successful in that space?
Oh, well, I think, I pretty much don't ever miss a cafeteria, and
Mm-hmm.
just, within F3, if you want to get to know guys, that's where you gotta try to aim for is showing up to as many cafeterias as you can. Um, I'm also kind of a person who doesn't do small talk well, but I will dig into the well of like psychotherapy. Like
Yeah.
I'll just get into it real deep with guys. I mean, to me, I just like to listen to people's stories, understand where they're coming from. So I tend to ask questions a lot when I'm sitting across from a new guy that I've never met before, and I just want to get to know him. I'll be like, "Hey, tell me about yourself." And pretty soon, before I know it, I realize we have like 5 different things in common, and you know maybe we're gonna like have a backyard barbecue at some point here in the near future or something. Just
Yeah.
you have to really engage uh, with other guys to realize where those friendships lie.
Hmm. I love that, and I really appreciate you, having the courage to take those conversations deeper. I think that's one of the things where, like, in our group, right? I mean, we complete a workout, right? You do something really difficult together, and then you're at that in that coffee setting, and I think that's the perfect place to have a deeper conversation. And for me, like, I've just never followed, college or professional sports. So then, like, if you're talking about, like I love to play, but like I don't know I know people like the Chiefs around here and the Huskers, and I watch games, but I don't follow, right? So then
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what's your deepest, darkest secret or fear, or which sometimes can come off awkward, but I think those are the conversations that we sort of need to be having, right? How, like, what, how can we help each other?
I'm just imagining a guy talking about, did you guys see the game last night? And you're like, what's your deepest, darkest fear? Like right in the middle of
Yeah, yeah, I
it.
don't know. It's I don't know. So I guess from your perspective, do you feel like you've got more deeper, closer male relationships today than you did when you started?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've said this a couple times, but whenever I go to like a CSOP or when we did the 5 year anniversary, and I'm just standing around all these guys, I'm kind of overwhelmed. I'm kind of like a golden retriever just jumping around because almost every single guy I recognize and I want to say hi to, and not just so I want to say hi to, I want to hug them and tell them
Yeah.
how awesome they are, because there's just like so many people now in my life, and I think that what gives that kind of energizes me in a sense, to come out to F3 every time. It's basically the glue, like we talked
Hmm.
about, to me sticking around. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if I came out and nobody cared about whether I was there or not, I wouldn't be coming to the beatdowns, because
Yeah.
that's not what motivates me to work out. What motivates me to work out is I get to go see guys that I like to be around.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's perfect and well said. So I want to pick your brain about something, because as I'm hearing you talk, I feel like we have some similarities. So I sort of thrive off of this like validation, right?
Mm.
From others. Like I love to be told I'm doing a good job or whatever. But I also notice something you have that I wish I was better at is more of a desire to encourage other people. Like I have to really pay attention to
Mhm.
that, and like try really hard to be like, okay, focus on them, focus on them. How have you developed that? Because I see that in you, and just curious what, I don't know,
Well,
maybe it's just how you are.
yeah, well, I appreciate that. I feel like I'm still working on it, like I'm still every day I feel like I need to be better. There's sometimes I'll go into a beat down and afterwards I'll just feel like, was I a negative Nelly? Is like somebody, did I bring somebody down? Because, a lot of times like if somebody's queuing, I tend to want to be funny, we all want to make those smart ass
Yeah.
comments, and I tend to be the same. And sometimes I let that get away from me a little bit. And there's been a couple times where I've been talking to guys and they've said something to me. I won't name names, but it was a little bit hurtful, and you get that. So there is some conflict there,
Mm.
but again, it comes back to like, honestly, I'm just really trying lately, more and more, to sow kindness and grace and love into the world. And
Mm.
that include and the primary place for me to do that is really F3 at this point. And so whenever I'm at a beatdown and I see a guy that I just, maybe is a lot like me physically, or is struggling, I get up to them. I come run by them, and I say, "You're doing great. Let's do this together. We got like a few blocks left to run. I'm like, let's get this done. And
Mm.
just encouraging them, because there's guys that have done that for me. I'm
Hmm.
basically following the example of people like Tater Tot, and
Yeah.
you've done this too. Like you've been pretty encouraging to me. So it's a cycle that we just keep going back and forth with each other, and I think that makes a huge difference in what sets F3 apart from other organizations, like say CrossFit or something, where there's a fitness component, but that's really because we're free. You can go or you can stay. It's all your
Hmm.
choice. Like nothing is keeping you here, but the camaraderie and the positivity. That's pretty much
Yeah.
it. And so I see myself as an ambassador to that, not just from my faith perspective, but as an F3 representative, basically.
Yeah, man, that was so beautiful what you said about just trying to focus on sowing seeds of kindness, joy, and love into, any interaction you have. I wrote that down. I'm gonna be thinking about that because that's what we should all be focusing on. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
I'm curious, and a kind of a good segue into the third F, kind of the faith piece. I want to call out, when I have emailed you and like sending you the link for this, right? I noticed your email is part of a plan.
Uh-huh.
I think that has the faith reference maybe, but I don't know. Share with us a little bit about your faith, and would love to hear your thoughts too on sort of how is F3 doing in helping guys develop and explore their faith. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a great. Yeah, so part of a plan. Yeah, I think I came up with that. Oh, gosh, I don't know, high school or something like that.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I grew up in a believing household, evangelical, and so yeah, I've been a believer my whole life, and um, I think that my development honestly is kind of like a meandering path myself. Like I'm constantly questioning things and trying to embrace mystery,
Hmm.
while I also still have this foundation of Jesus Christ is the rock of my faith and my foundation. But I honestly I think F3 opened for me. Excuse me, opened for me the doors to be a little bit more open minded about my faith because
Mm.
we work out with guys who have all kinds of different backgrounds. We work out with Catholics and evangelicals, some atheists, agnostics, people who, to them, faith means different things, obviously. Um, what I think, though, is when I'm digging in and having those kind of questions with guys, what intrigues me most is why people believe what they believe. So,
Mm.
I may ask, do you go to church? Oh, where do you go to church? What do you guys believe there? Stuff like that. Because some guys, once you open that door, they think maybe you have an agenda, and they're like,
Yeah.
what is this person trying to sell me on? And I just don't. I just am genuinely curious. Like, what is it really about for you? And I've had some great conversation with some guys about, maybe they struggle in their faith, or maybe they're in a process still, and they're trying to find some things. And
Mhm.
and I think we all in F3 can do always a better job at listening to each other instead of necessarily trying to impose our viewpoint on others. But I think
Yeah.
in the midst of it, what really matters, more than whether we have the correct interpretation of our faith, is how we live it out. Because if we're not doing that, then I really don't care how you believe. I care about how you live out what you believe.
Mm.
Are you genuinely um, filling the world, like I said, with love and grace and kindness? Because those are the things that are ultimately going to matter, in my view. So
Yeah. I love that. And I mean, I'm with you, right? Like I know what I believe and I know what my sort of faith system is. I'm a Lutheran, so there's a few of us out there, but but I also like I'm not the person that's going to change somebody else's heart, right? So like if you're going to believe in Jesus or maybe or be curious about beliefs, right, there's got to be some conversation, but then ultimately that's like between you and the sky q, right? Like
yeah,
he's going to work in your heart. I'm not equipped to do all of that work, right? There's got to be some work in there, at least that's from my perspective. But it's still this element that I love that we are able to have conversations about, right? And to your point of like asking some of those difficult questions, because that's what we're here to do, right? We're here to sharpen each other. And I think a lot of what I find is guys are open to talking about it in F3, and then, sort of people are doing their own thing on their own sort of, spot in their faith journey, but at least the space to talk through it. What about like some of the book studies, or maybe it's Q source, or would be curious if mental battle kind of conversations fit into the faith space. But as far as giving guys space and resources to explore what they believe, is that something you feel like we're doing well at?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, so I personally haven't been able to attend any of the book studies. I've done Q Source though, and Q Source has been some of the most profound discussions I've ever had at F3.
Hmm.
You talk about some guys just really getting in deep. I would say if you can go to a Q Source meeting, because there, and I'll say not everything in Q Source I even myself agree with, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily about like what those guys who wrote it thought about the subject. It's about, you just need to think deeper about this subject. Period.
Mm-hmm.
How does family and fit into your leadership? How does F3, like the whole alignment of your, I guess, solar system needs to be in a certain way, and or what works for you. But also F3 has kind of found these universal truths in some sense that it does grab in through Q source, that you're like, well, that works, duh. But like a lot of guys just don't know that. And
Yeah.
then you have deeper discussions on how do you actually practice these things. Like, we talk about concentrica. I hadn't heard that term before Q source, and then we talked about the concentrica, and it became more real to me that, like, F3 is helping me feed back into my leadership in my family, in these ways, and then hearing how it helped other guys, just as an example.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one piece, and then I think the other piece is we have some great leadership. Um, we have guys, whether they will admit it or not, in the leadership, who are very spiritual beings. They're very deep, and they provide the kind of like necessary alignment, in some ways, examples for people. I think, Tater Tot is Arnie Antan, and one of the things that I really appreciate about Tater Tot is I'm not, I don't know, I know that he has faith, but that's not what concern, for me and Tater Tot, when we've had our conversations, what I've really appreciated about him is he just lives his life
Mm-hmm.
in a way that, he's going to be an expression of, encouragement and positivity to you. There's a couple times, and I don't know if I've ever said this to him directly, where I feel like the Holy Spirit spoke to him through me, like I needed to hear that in that moment. And maybe he's like, I don't believe in that crap. That's okay. But
Yeah.
just listen to me, Tater. You've encouraged me, just by some of the things you've said to me. And I think that that's, and there's other people like in leadership, Firewalker, Wentworth, these guys, they are in their own way kind of the monks of F3, and they
Yeah.
bring forth that kind of spirituality, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
Anyway, a little
That's
bit of
cool. I love that. Yeah. And I think it's so true. And it's fascinating to me to watch how, whatever you believe, right? God, Sky Q, or other, like the power of relationships, right? And especially these relationships where somebody is willing to tell you a hard truth every once in a while, or ask you a difficult question, or, like you said, the Holy Spirit speaking to you through other people. I can't, yeah, the number of times that I feel like somebody said something and I'm like, wait a minute, that's something I'm dealing with over here that you don't even know about. It's
yeah,
like, I don't know. It's more than a coincidence, right? So
yeah.
I love that. Hey, tell me a little bit, think the other point of this is just, hearing your story, which I really appreciated everything you've shared so far. And I want to get your thoughts on kind of our mission, right? So we're trying to reinvigorate male community leadership and really thinking through, how do we do that, right? BQs, site cues, some of those types of things. But what's been your experience? And would love to hear about your time as site cue at Octagon.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think being a site cue at Octagon was a privilege and a great honor. And it was, I'm really glad I did it. We also had the opportunity at that time. I felt, that it might be good for us to start some mental battle meetups after Octagon. And so I think that, and what I appreciate again about F3 is just, if you have an idea, nobody's going to stop you. Nobody's going to tell you, that's dumb. I mean, maybe somebody will, but you don't have to listen to them. That's okay. Right. But so the story behind mental battle here is, my father-in-law in 2016 committed suicide, and I had a COT at some point. I can't remember when. I think it was like my 1 year or something where I was talking about this, and it impressed on me that there are a lot of guys out there that with kind of a hidden layer to them, possibly, where they come out, they do the workouts, they go home, and they're just sad. There's a the term sad clown, where that's what F3 is. We're the remedy for the sad clown who they just putting on this face. They cannot act in the they're looking for improvement in their lives. They're looking for something, and they don't really know what it is, this empty space. But there's some guys, which I would call broken clowns, who they can't even lift themselves into that place. And those are people who are, I think, a lot in society where we kind of ignore them, and to a certain degree, or we don't dig enough to find those guys. I think that F3 already has people like that. And that's why I started Mental Battle, because I wanted to reach out to people who, maybe they were looking for some more accountability, some more support in places where they might be dealing with some severe mental struggles and mental battles. And so I thought, Octagon, I have this opportunity. I'm always going to be there every single Monday. And I know that there's some guys in that area that could probably use this. So we started meeting, every other week over at Scooters. At first, I was going to make it something more of like a, mental health instruction type group where we're listening to other guys talk about their expertise. And it sort of fell apart from that, because what I realized is more people needed to be heard than to be talked to. And so we ended up having about, I would say, 5 or 6 core guys who just kept coming and meeting up. And we still meet when we can. Because I'm no longer at Octagon, it makes it a little bit harder to get together. But we try to make an effort to at least reach out to each other on Slack and text. And we have some guys who, they've been really helped by this, been able to work through some tough stuff and really dig in with each other's lives. I would also say that I think during my time at Octagon, I didn't realize how much I needed something like that before I even started it, because I constantly, I don't necessarily have mental health issues myself, but I do struggle just like everybody else does. We all have something, whether we know it or not, where we struggle with what other people think about us, how we're projecting ourselves, what we even think about ourselves, these negative voices that are constantly in our heads. I have that in spades half the time. And I just, I feel that this has been, one going and being a part of a core group, getting to know guys and starting to really learn from them how they deal with their things, whether it's in mental battle or your shield lock or any sort of smaller cadre of guys that you can be a part of. That's beneficial to leadership overall.
Yeah.
Like you can learn leadership through a book, which I've read numerous books on leadership. But to really put it into practice, you need to see other people living it out, especially when challenges are met and things start happening in their lives.
Yeah, man, I love that, and I couldn't agree more. I think there's something about like like you said, whether it's overthinking or maybe it's an actual mental health diagnosis, right? But like validation from real people that you're not the only one,
Mm-hmm.
and also sometimes you need somebody else to validate that what you're thinking about yourself is just not true. It just
Exactly.
is not true. And so
Exactly.
I think creating space for that, and I love what you said about, I do this too, where I'm like, I got all this stuff I got to tell people, and we're going to do it this way. And you're like, oh wait, they just want to be heard, right? Heard
Right.
and loved. So I really appreciate you just having the awareness that there was a need, and
Mm.
then taking advantage, putting it together. I'm curious, anything else from your time as Site Q that you feel like maybe you've learned as a leader for your family or as you're leading other guys? Anything in that space?
Uh, yeah, I would say that um, numbers don't matter.
Yeah.
What matters is that you're showing up, that you're always available, and just being a presence. When I was handed over Octagon from Ice T, he gave me one word of advice, and I think he meant this to be to just be an encouragement of leave it better than you found it.
Mm.
And that was my goal, was to try and leave it better than I found it. And I'll say that I struggled at times because there were just things that it was like I wanted to do. I wanted to do more improvements. Like even one little thing, like I wanted to do more work on the shovel flag. I wanted to redo the entire shovel flag, and I didn't do that. I kept putting
Mhm.
zip ties on it, but um, just things like that because I was dealing with all this other stuff with work and stuff like that. And but when I passed the shovel flag to Hua, what I saw in other people's eyes was a look of satisfaction of
Mm.
you brought us in, you brought us to this point,
Mhm.
and all of that just washed away all the doubt of like what the heck was I doing? How did I do
Wow.
as a Site Q? Because of that, and then these are my goal always is to pour out into other people. That's what I try to do, at least when I'm out there. And my my hope is that with Octagon, well, I'll say one thing I did do is I got a new logo, and I wanted to put our motto on there, which was "We are the most welcoming AO,"
Yeah.
and that's what Tea Party told me. He saw us as the most welcoming AO, and
That's awesome.
I was like, I love that. So I put that on the shirt, and I think a lot of guys saw that as well because we would have the same guys coming over all the time, and they were, we became even more close because there was that consistent group of guys over and over
Mhm.
and over again. So that's important.
Yeah, I love it, and I think you did an excellent job, and even selecting Hua as your successor. I mean, and he's going to do great things too. I think what's so hard is we want to measure outcomes, but so much of what we're doing in F3 is based on relationships, and so then
Mm.
measuring the outcome is almost impossible, right? We won't know till the end, and so it's like you don't know, like the one time that you were there and you said made some comment that seemed normal to you, and it changed somebody else's view for the day, or there's just no way to measure the impact that you can have as a site Q. So I really appreciate it. And I love the logo. I was just running behind somebody else the other day and saw that. And it's just cool. It's cool as our sites get logos. We got to do something where we bring back all the old t-shirt orders or something. And, there's too many of them. But I would be curious if you have sort of any advice for guys. Maybe it's a F&G or a new site Q or just for us as a region, as you're thinking about your experience and as we are continuing to expand and grow, any insight or advice that you would want to share?
Yeah. I think, whatever you do in F3, like, just like you were saying, emphasize the relationship. I think for guys like me, like I have never been a athlete. Like first off, I was homeschooled. Second, I never played any organized sports. I've struggled with my weight all my life, and I've never felt like I could relate to any jocks in my life whatsoever. So when I came to F3, what sucked me in was not the hardest challenges necessarily. It wasn't iron packs or anything like that. And I can understand why it does appeal to a lot of guys, like those kind of things. I get it. Like, but for me, I'm not that type of guy. So I would say, as we continue this growth, if we want to continue on this trajectory of growth and building up guys as leaders, not just like making them buff, but building them up as leaders, we need to continue to emphasize the depth of our relationships with each other. Shield locks are very important for this kind of thing. They are not necessarily talked about as much in like the wider in the AO perspective, like between beat downs and pre-runs and stuff like that. And I don't know how many people actually talk about how you even get a shield lock together. You can listen to podcasts like Stuff Worth Trying and get an idea. So I think that's a good place to start. But I would encourage you, if you are a guy who's coming out and maybe you're just starting with F3, go to the cafeterias as much as you possibly can and get plugged into guys that way, and continue to ask questions about each other's lives. And you might start to realize that these guys that, like, there's guys that are just monsters physically. They're awesome physically, but they're also more like me than I ever realized. When I would talk to them, I'd be like you and I look at you and I'm like, man, your beatdowns are really hard and I don't like going through them. But I enjoy being around you and I enjoy talking to you. And so that makes me want to go to your beatdown because I know, I'm gonna probably want to throw up at the end, but then after I throw up, I'll go talk to you and we'll have a pretty deep conversation about stuff. Anyway, my whole point is just continue those relationships. Yeah,
that's well said. I love it. And I've tried to do less burpees in my beatdown. I think these days Mufasa has more burpees in his intro than I have in my whole beatdown now. But I still try to make them hard. Well, I appreciate that. And, I think one of the things that you're emphasizing that I just love about our group is just this open to all men, right? Like we don't care if you played sports or not, right? Your physical condition or abilities, right? We just want you there. We just want to be we just want you there. We want to have your influence because, I think we need every guy just as much as we think every guy needs us, and so I love that insight. I would be curious if, is there anything that we didn't cover that maybe you were hoping to share, or that comes to mind that you would want to share? Anything on that list that maybe we didn't get to?
No, not necessarily. I think I'll just briefly say this about mental battle too. Like, we are. I want to send an invitation out to anybody in F3 Omaha, because I'm not very public about mental battle, and I haven't really been advertising it. But I want to send an invitation out to you. If you are struggling with mental health, please feel free to DM me, and I will get you hooked up with our group. We're kind of like a shield lock, not necessarily. We have guys who are actually more kind of in their own little shield lock within that group. But it's important enough for me to know that you're out there, and that we can connect. We are not therapy. We're not a replacement for any sort of mental health support group that actually you need. We're not medication. We're not going to be. But what we'll do is we'll point you to the resources you need, and we'll listen to you. And there's so many guys out there just like you, whether you think it or not. Let's just give me a call.
Yeah, I appreciate that. One of the things that has been interesting to me, so I put out this video of like, hey, let's, suicide awareness prevention month in September. And we reopened the mental battle shirt on the gear store. And this is just observation. I'm not trying to judge people. And it could just be my poor marketing skills. But at the same time, right, there's a shirt put out there for breast cancer awareness. Both important causes. I think it's so much easier to talk about breast cancer than it is to talk about, like, my thoughts aren't always positive. Yeah. So, and the stats would suggest, 35% of guys that take their own lives seek help before, which is really low. And so I want to just echo what you said of like, reach out, get in a shield lock, some way, shape, or form, lean into the group to have conversations. And I guess I would just encourage guys to not be ashamed of what's going on in your mind, right? And a lot of times what I have found is, as soon as I say it out loud to somebody else, I hear how ridiculous I'm being. and then I can sort of like move on, right? It's like, oh my gosh, whatever I just said is like a total, like, that doesn't make sense, but it's like having the conversation. So I just appreciate you creating space for that. I don't know if you had anything to add to that, but it's an interesting observation I've noticed. And no judgment to anybody. I get we all support different causes, but just kind of this interesting nuance with mental health that we're still struggling to remove all of the stigma.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and we're, it's a cycle, like you said earlier. It's a cycle and a journey that it's not going to change overnight. And so we just keep moving forward. I do want to also get, as you're thinking about your life today and what you're going through, is there anything, we could be praying for you about, or anything when we see you next time in the gloom we should be encouraging you on? Anything in that space?
Not a lot right now, actually. Like, I did have a rough past couple months. I had lost my job. Our car died. Our AC died. We had bought a house right before that. All of this happened within a month. Like, we had just bought a house, lost my job, lost a car, lost AC, and all of these things just happened. But God's been good, and people have really already pitched in and been praying and helping and supporting. So yeah, just continue to pray that all of those things that have been recovering stay recovered, and I don't have any more shoes hit the floor.
Nice. All right, we'll do, man. And praise, right, for things working out the way that they have. So
absolutely, just praise.
It's been
for
awesome.
That.
Hey, thanks so much for just being yourself and sharing your story with us. This has been great. We'll do a little Namerama, close us out. I'll start here. Brandon Flaherty, 37, The Plague.
Zach Perkins, 38, Golden Pike.
Golden Pike. And have you come up with a call sign yet, or not
No,
yet?
well, I tried to do something like this, like I have a pike, but that motion doesn't work out well.
That's awesome.
You can't see it in audio, but I will show it to you if you ask me.
That's funny. Yeah, I'll have to come up with some. Ask Swiper. Swiper, I feel like, is the genius behind most of these call signs.
For sure.
This has been awesome. Hey, thanks for your time, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks.
Later.